Okay, North Room, let's get started. Again, I'm Christina Bigby. I thank you for joining the North Breakout Room. Also, I'd like to say I'm a fellow Prince George's Countier, and I live in Prince George's County and in the North section, so I'm really excited to be here with you today presenting. We are taking some time to get people in the rooms. I think most people are in the rooms. I would like you to know during the presentation, we do ask that you're muted. To maximize input, we're going to use Slido again, as I mentioned. So this is a different code from before, so please go ahead and log into that while we wait for everyone to join us. And Karen, how many people do we have joining us in the room at the moment?
Looks like there's 17.
Okay, that's a great number. We can really have a great dialogue here. Again, Slido's the way we're going to get a lot of participation. So we are going to go ahead and get started. I will say if you put your questions in the chat, we will be answering questions at the end of the presentation. If someone asks a question that you like, you can just kind of put a thumbs up beside it, and then we'll know that's a very popular question. Okay, so as mentioned in the main room presentation, community feedback is so essential to this master plan process, to this MPOT process. Again, we begin by soliciting feedback in the fall during agency and municipal meetings. And in this breakout room, we're going to present to you what we presented to the agency and municipal meetings and the feedback they shared with us. So we're going to present 6 major transportation themes. And once we share the initial feedback, it's your turn. We want you to tell us what you think about these themes and to give us your comments. And we're using the Slido tool to do that. Again, post any questions you have in the chat and we'll have a brief Q&A at the end. All right, are we ready? I'm feeling nods and thumbs up. So let's go. First, we'll talk, the first transportation theme is active transportation. I'm going to define that a little bit because people often aren't quite sure. So active transportation is the transport of people or goods through non-motorized means based around human physical activities. So this could be like biking, walking, even skateboarding, roller skating, even like non-motorized wheelchair. That's considered active transportation. We really want to define that so when we go into the feedback portion, we're all on the same page. So these are the questions we asked in the agency municipal meetings that we had in the fall. We asked what are the biggest impediments to building new trails? We asked what are the most significant gaps in the trail system? And we asked how can the master plan of transportation help improve trail development and trail maintenance? And this is the feedback. When we talked about active transportation in previous meetings, preliminary feedback we received were there were impediments for existing and future trail paths. Some of those include political priorities, difficulties finding available right-of-ways, lack of ownership, lack of trail connectivity. We had trail system gaps. They identified some in Laurel, Hyattsville, Rhode Island, state road crossings, Maryland 193, 202, and 201, and there were some suggested improvements, like reassess current trails and encourage maintenance schedules, creating uniform wayfinding and lighting, and educating the public about active transportation. So the next slide is going to be a Slido slide where you can help participate, and we're going to ask you a question. We're going to ask you, what do you think is missing from the feedback that we received from other community members? So look at this slide. What do you think about impediments for active transportation? What do you think are the system gaps? And what are suggested improvements? So what you see on the screen may take about 2 seconds to show up on your phone or mobile. And if you we're asking you, in your view, what is missing from the active transportation feedback you just saw on the previous slide? Again, you can take a moment to join us at slido.com, enter this code, or if you use your phone or mobile device and just scan the QR code on your screen, the information will come in automatically. So just want to get a sense, are people able to access the Slido? Could we go back to the slide for a minute? Yes, I can go back to the slide. I will tell you when I go back to the slide, it's going to deactivate the Slido for a moment, but let's go back. So this is the preliminary feedback that we've received previously about active transportation. Active transportation would be any kind of transport of people or goods through non-motorized means, through human physical activity. So we're asking your view, what was missing from the feedback? You're welcome, Richard. Political will and consistent funding, okay? What else do you think is maybe missing from the previous feedback, or or maybe you say, well, they kind of captured it with the previous feedback, but you want to tell us what your thoughts are on active transportation impediments. Funding for trails, municipal coordination, and free events, okay? Challenges in right-of-way access. We need active transportation zones where right-of-way is shared by all modes. Okay, so I know we have about 4 responses, 6 responses, but we have about 17 people in here. Funding, priorities. Can we expand upon that priorities a bit? Incomplete trail system in neighborhoods. Access entry points to trails. Bike parking policy. There's a long one. For biking, most important thing is safety and connectedness. For walking, most important is dignified and pleasant. The main impediment is State Highway Administration, in your opinion, which wants more car lanes, despite the fact that transport forecast models are way too high. Thank you for providing your opinion on that. Lack of enforcement for stopping at crosswalk. Modified driver tests that focus on bike and pedestrian safety. Okay. We're getting a lot of good things that these were not items that were on the previous slide, and the feedback we have not received it before. Ranking of project delivery. Okay. Lack of coordination across government levels and with parks crossing major roads. So I see we have about 11 people who have commented so far. You can comment more than once. We're going to spend maybe about another 20 seconds, so kind of get that last comment in, because once we move to the next screen, you may not be able to add. You won't be able to add. Lack of bike parking and lack of bike lanes. You don't feel comfortable using same lane as cars. And there are gaps. Some of the gaps are in the bike trails. And there's some density on roads. Okay, you believe there's a car-centric culture. Okay, so this is a lot of feedback here. Automatic pedestrian cyclist phases. Could you clarify that? Is that a need? Is that, you feel that's a need? Lack of safe back lane. Okay.
But I think that phases thing, it's like they use beg buttons.
I'm sorry, I just didn't hear the last part of what you said.
I don't know. Is that I just had a question that you asked someone to clarify the lack of pedestrian signals. Is that related to beg buttons? The fact that you have to push a button and wait and stand there to cross the road.
Oh, when you cross the road. So think it should be
is that what they're
automatic.
referring to?
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. If the person who posted that, you can unmute. It's enough of us in here. We can unmute to clarify. If not, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next question, the next presentation. Lack of crosswalks and off.
Yeah, that wasn't my comment, but I definitely agree with that. I don't know how to like it in the thing.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay. And if you do comment, please, like out loud, please give us your name, because we, want to get to know each other. All right, I'm going to move to the next slide. This is a great start to the North Prince George's County room. I feel like you all are not shy, and we are going to have a great dialogue today. So,
Christina?
Yes.
This is Quasi. I did want to also mention there is some chat going on. There's some answers happening in the chat, I should say, as well as the poll.
Okay, excellent. From my presentation standpoint, I cannot actually see that, but what we can do is we can go ahead and add, we can save the chat and we can go ahead and add that in as well. So these chats will be saved, and we'll make sure that your contribution is being considered. Additionally, possibly, Karen, can you go in and just add a few comments in there as well if people place it in the chat? Thank you, Quasi.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm going to give people maybe 10 more seconds on this slide, and then we'll move forward. to the next transportation theme. And if you see me looking down, I'm just looking at my notes to make sure I'm giving you all the information you need. Okay. Sidewalks that have gaps. Crosswalks are poorly designed. Okay. Going to move forward. The next transportation thing we want to talk a little bit about is Vision Zero. Maybe a few of you can use the like hand raise button or the like thumbs up button just to let us know. Have you heard of Vision Zero before? And Karen, you can let me know how many people are kind of raising their thumbs up there. Okay. So Vision Zero, for those who know and for those who this is new to, Vision Zero is a county-wide strategy to achieve zero fatalities and serious injuries on roadways by 2040. So Prince George's County recognizes that the loss of even one life or serious injury on our roads is unacceptable. So Vision Zero takes a data-driven approach to reveal that vehicle crashes are predictable and therefore preventable. So this crash data is showing that there's a clear need for safety improvements on our roadways. And Prince George's County believes the key to success in achieving Vision Zero is combining approaching these 6 essential elements for a safe transportation system. Now, this is one of my favorite Vision Zero slides because it talks about a traditional Vision Zero approach versus, a traditional approach versus a Vision Zero approach. Traditionally, traffic deaths are inevitable, but Vision Zero says they're preventable. Perfect human behavior, traditional approach, but Vision Zero says we can integrate human failing into the approach. Traditional approach says, oh, we can prevent collisions, but Vision Zero says we want to prevent fatal and severe crashes in systems, severe crashes. Traditional says it's an individual responsibility, but Vision Zero says we can have a systems approach. And traditional approach says saving lives is expensive, but Vision Zero says saving lives is not expensive. It's what we want to do. So again, I'm going to go back to a question that we asked in the previous community meetings. We asked, what are some of the impediments to implementing Vision Zero? We asked, how can the master plan of transportation help achieve Vision Zero goals? And then we asked, are there safety improvements in one part of the county you would like to see in another region? Right. So this is the feedback we received. And then just like the last slide, I'm going to ask you to tell us, well, what's missing? What do you think? So the feedback we received to some impediments to Vision Zero include limited funding and political will, education, driver behaviors, ride roads, lack of collaboration, that the MPOC can help achieve Vision Zero goals by encouraging public participation and interagency coordination, incorporating safety infrastructure, and that the groups we spoke with previously said they'd love to see more pedestrian facilities, protected bike lanes, tactical urbanism, improved urban design standards and roadways. So I'm going to hold it here for a moment because you know what's coming next is a Slido, and we're going to say, what do you think is missing? When we talk about Vision Zero, we talk about impediments to achieving this zero fatalities and serious injury. When we talk about how we can promote it more, what groups would like to see, what do you think is missing in your view? This may take a moment to show up on your phone or your mobile device. If you're just joining us, you can go to slido.com, enter this code, or you can do the scan the QR code. So when we think about Vision Zero, textured pavement, traffic law enforcement, so Vision Zero, overbuilt roads. And when we see some of these, if I may ask for you to expand upon that a bit. So some of the impediments of vision, go ahead.
Sorry, Christina, this is Quasi. I was going to ask if the person that wrote traffic law enforcement might be able to expand upon that. I'm curious what they were thinking there.
Okay. Well, that person, you can unmute and tell us what you think, or you can maybe throw it in the chat.
That's me, Sam
Okay,
Dennis.
excellent.
I mean, speeding, intersection violations, whether it's cars stopping in crosswalks or running red lights, turning on red stop signs, you name it. It's there's a lack of enforcement for unsafe drivers. Yeah, just walk down the street any day and you'll observe it. And it can be done either through with I think increased enforcement can either be done by uniformed officers or automated enforcement.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down a bit so we can capture some that were coming through while that individual was speaking. Lowering driving speed in pedestrian-friendly areas. There's a problem to implement if the state or federal owns the road. Lack of prioritizing moving people safely could be an impediment. Overdevelopment in residential areas. Pedestrian activity pathways are too loose on major roads. Improved lighting could help with achieve Vision Zero. Lack of holding drivers accountable for unsafe behavior, which may kind of touch on what the other caller was saying about enforcement. Incorporating Vision Zero within MVA education programs or driver's ed. So that's a creative way that you can incorporate Vision Zero. Also, somebody said required driver training about pedestrians and cyclists, which kind of ties into that last point about incorporating into education programs. You can help achieve goals by pulling over reckless drivers even before there's an accident that leads to fatality. So we're seeing a bit of a theme here with enforcement. Somebody also thinks overdevelopment in residential areas. I saw that a couple times, a bit of a theme. And pedestrian activity pathways are too close to major roads. I think you're saying that means it's dangerous. Cars blocking crosswalks, lack of enforcement on there again. And then a fact about a number of accidents due to a blowout. I think you mentioned like a tire blowout. And then we need to have less turn on red, lack of alignment across state to local governments. So I want to bring up that lack of alignment across governments. That was something that was on the last slide as well. And so that's a recurring theme that we're seeing. We need to have so this is a bit about the MPOT specifically. Be more specific about which roads are for high speeds and place-to-place transport and which are for neighborhood access and place development and economic support. Roads for speed versus safe streets for access. Can't have highway designs and people places. And this person's opinion just doesn't work. And you want to cue drivers to speed and pass rather than be careful. That's part of what doesn't work. The MPOT can help show where we want fast transport and limited access versus low speeds, people priority and economic growth. Roads designed for speed, not safety. Speed limits or speed is a theme here. And this person said never felt unsafe as pedestrian anywhere else they lived. So then that gets a little bit, if that person maybe wants to speak up or add in the chat or add in this in the, excuse me, Slido. Some of the feedback we received previously, one of the questions was, is there something in another county or another jurisdiction related to Vision Zero that you would like to see us implement here? That individual said they never felt unsafe in other places. So is there something they're implementing elsewhere that you would like to see implemented in Prince George's County? You can go off mute if you want to answer that.
Hi, that was me, Tina, and I've lived in both Seattle and New York and some other places. I don't know if it's maybe signage. I definitely see, I think it was brought up in the last poll, that there's a lot of blocking of pedestrian pathways. Like every time I try to cross the street, somebody will just be like, they try to jet out from, they're at a red light, but they try to get as far as they possible, and then they're stuck and they're, they can't go anywhere, but they're blocking the intersection. And maybe it's just a cultural thing as well as like cutting people off. And yeah, maybe it's just something around here. I don't know. There's more signage that can be put up, like do not block intersection or something. But I've seen it a lot more here than I have in other places I've lived. And I'm like always concerned to be walking around, which I do most of as a car-free person. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So what I thank you for sharing, and what I'm hearing there is maybe you're kind of unsure, but you think maybe signage has something big to do with it. So signage and wayfinding. We're going to spend maybe about a few more seconds on this one. I just want to make sure we can see everyone's comments that were coming in as we were having that discussion. Someone said maybe it's helpful to remind people that more traffic deaths in Prince George's County if than homicides in a given year, putting perspective, Holy Town walk lights that are too short, recognize that all rights of way must be available to all modes of transportation, sidewalks, confusing laws, tire blowouts. Yes, you were saying that your comment, the comment earlier was about tire blowouts.
Christina, I'm seeing in the participant list, there are a couple people with their hands up. I'm not sure if that was from a previous question or if they actually have a question or a comment.
I think that may have been from when we asked people if they had heard of Vision Zero, but if you have a question or a comment, please let us know. Well, questions, larger questions we're trying to hold to the end of the presentation, but if you have a comment about this Vision Zero, please let us know if that's what your hand is raised for. Otherwise, you may lower the hand. And Karen, just let me know if you see those as well. I think maybe that was from when I asked if people had heard of Vision
Yeah,
Zero.
they all lowered it.
Okay, excellent. But that's good. You've heard of Vision Zero, which is great. We want more people to know. Fewer high-speed right turns and slip lanes would really help where people on bikes are. And during COVID in Baltimore, the city blocked off all right turnoffs and bumped out sidewalks near commercial buildings. I think that individual, that's in response to when I said what's being done in other jurisdictions. Would you mind coming off mute just to confirm if that's what you mean by that?
Yeah, this is Megan. I
Megan.
live in Baltimore, and so during the pandemic, when a lot more people were walking and trying to access both like the campus and parks, the city worked with the neighborhood groups and basically closed off some areas like those flip-offs and bumped out with the divided lanes, so you can't make a really quick right turn. And they've decided to make those permanent. And I think once they were established now for almost 2 years during the pandemic, people have gotten used to it. And I've noticed just slower traffic once those have been there for enough time that drivers got used to it.
Okay, and it felt safer to you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Sidewalks should be clear of telephone poles, trash cans, fire hydrants, superfluous curbs, and at corners, sidewalks should be curb free. All right, again, this group is great. We're getting lots of good feedback. Really appreciate it. We're going to move on to the next transportation theme. We have 6 and we just covered 2. So let's move forward. Again, if you're putting stuff in the chat, we will be able to monitor that as well. And we'll save that. Okay, so the next theme is transit. So as we did before, we're going to define it. So for the purpose of this study, the MPOT, transit is motorized public transportation such as buses, bus rapid transit, and rail transit. So the MPOT will identify locations within the county that can be considered high congestion, low transit corridors. We're going to identify best practices, identify roadways and transit infrastructure that may require additional infrastructure to achieve long-term mode share goals, and identify like the next large-scale transit corridor in the county and potential future bus transit corridors. So again, in the fall, we met with agencies and municipalities, and we asked them, where do you see transit in Prince George's in the next 15 years? And what are priorities, concerns, and opportunities for transit in the county? This is their feedback. So we'll stay on this slide for a bit because the next question we're going to ask you, what's missing? What do you think? It's your turn to give that feedback. What some people want to see in 5 to 15 years, a wider transit network, better pedestrian facilities, reorienting development to the street, connecting transit-oriented development areas, more frequent service and late night weekend service. Some priorities included equity of access, connecting workers to jobs, dealing with the last mile problem, focusing on a connected road system, reliability, and ease of use. Okay, so when we talk about last mile, just to kind of define that a bit, basically that's saying like, what's that last bit of your transit segment? So if you maybe live in Laurel, but you take the Greenbelt Metro to work every day, how are you getting from the Metro back to your home in Laurel? What's that last mile look like? Are you biking? Are you ride sharing? What does that look like? So our next question is, what's missing from this feedback? In your view, what is missing from the transit feedback? If you said, this is where the priority should be, or this is where you would like to see transit in 5, 10, 15 years, did everything you would say, was it on that slide, or is there something else you want us to know? And again, it might take a moment to kind of show up on your device that you're using. So in that transit feedback, you think post-COVID transit would be more local, more quarter oriented, like up and down a major road rather than a long distance commute, because so many people are working from home maybe.
Christina, someone wrote call a bus options.
Call a bus options. So call a bus options in that you think that is what is needed, or that something you enjoy now that you'll see more of in 5, 10, 15 years? I see reduction of emissions. MBE supplier of a burn rate. Oh, wow. Oh, these answers are coming in. Repository of mass transit access options between dense communities. A place to know the transit options and how often they operated. You like to see a clear timeline for any kind of project completion. Agree with the priority of reliability. You agree with that, specifically with the changes during COVID. You'd like to see, someone would like to see better connectivity to destinations that don't require going to a metro stop first. So that's a bit of that last mile. This makes for excessively long routes, more town to town connections, landscaping and beautification of our roadways. So that wasn't mentioned at all in the previous feedback. So thank you. Better bus stops that are well lit and accessible. Mostly because, and someone also wrote, because so many people are working from home. Yes, that's a follow-up to a point I mentioned earlier. That's why you're guessing transit will be more local in the future and all day rather than long distance rush hour commutes between home and work. And you probably definitely saw a difference in traffic during the height of COVID when people were working, everyone was working from home. Better phone apps to track buses. Okay, so you want
Christina,
some technology to help with transit as well?
Christina,
Yes.
just as a follow-up on the call a bus option, the person here wrote, wish to see expanded, especially for seniors. So I think she's saying, or he's saying, just having options for seniors who can access more micro type transit.
Okay, understood. So thank you. So that is a bit about, access for all people to make sure that everyone's connected. Someone wrote better bus stops that are well lit and accessible. Could you come off mute and talk about that a bit? Do you mean accessible in the fact that there are more bus stops everywhere, or accessible in the fact of like, differing abilities?
Hi, I just think the bus stops that I see don't seem to attract new riders because they're just a sign on the side of the road.
Okay. All right. So thank you very much for expanding upon that. Okay. All right, we're going to keep going. Someone else agreed with beautification, the phone apps, so technology, weekend service, you agree with that? Mark connectivity through DC to Virginia, more bus shelters. Covered bus stops, someone you would like to see more of that. More, and I saw the weekend service. Better connectivity to MARC stations, we heard that twice. Okay, we'll give people a little bit more time. Think transit in the future, 5, 10, 15 years. We've heard some of that. And also, what are some priorities? Keep bus shelters in highly dense areas and covered bus stops. Okay. The number one priority is the bus shelters in highly dense areas. I believe that's in reference to that. Okay. Integrated transit need. All right. Thank you. So any other comments in the chat that maybe being a transit driver is a quality, respected, desirable job. I think what that person is saying is that it should be seen as actually, I don't want to say what I think it is. Can you come off mute and tell me what you mean by that particular comment?
I mean, just, that people desire it as a career, and therefore, I think people just have a better view of transit, and people want to work for transit. There are bus drivers people have been, terribly rude to some of them during the pandemic and before, and even abusive.
Understood. So what you're saying, one of the ways to make transit better is to be more appreciative of our transit drivers and the transit system in general.
Well, yeah, because it's not just about us, the riders, right? But the system needs to work for everyone. And yes, if you have experienced drivers that want to see it as a career, you have better safety, better reliability. I think you have a better service.
Thank you very much for expanding on that. Thank you. Microtransit zone covering first and last mile in dense area, in particular areas where bigger vehicles can maneuver. I will say, I'm not certain for the person who wrote that, are you aware that Prince George's County does have PGC Link, which is a microtransit in South County, like Fort Washington and near the harbor and a little bit lower. So they do have this, it's $2 a ride. It's called PGC Link, and it's in South County. So if you weren't aware of that, please definitely check that out. Go to the Prince George's County website, but they do have that. So thank you for telling us that that's something that you'd like to see more of. Private vehicle registration
Christina,
subsidized. Yes.
someone was writing in the chat, PGC Link. Yeah, that's what you said, right? I think they're wanting
Yes,
clarification.
I just said Prince George's County has PGC Link.
Okay.
It's only in certain counties, so it's a zone, it's in a certain zone, and right now it's in South County. Excuse me, it's in Prince George's County, but it's in the south portion of the county. So not here in North yet. What is missing from?
And Karen, I'm sorry, Karen just put a link into, I think, some microtransit link for people to look at in the chat.
Yes, thank you. We are just a team. You, me, and Karen, and all of our participants. Thank you, Karen. So yes, that is an option. And actually PGC Link is microtransit, and it's through an app. So you can call in also, because everyone doesn't have access to app or internet, but it's an app, and you can go anywhere in that zone for $2 a ride, and that's considered microtransit. I see private vehicle registration subsidization of mass transit to a greater extent. Anything else about what's missing from that transit feedback? No? Okay. All right. So we have 6 transportation themes. We've just gone through 3. I'm enjoying the discussion. I hope you all enjoying the dialogue as well. Now we'll talk a bit about roadways. So as we did previously, we know the routine here. We're going to define it. So an MPOT, roadways will evaluate, for MPOT, they will evaluate the master plan right of ways for all roadway classifications, identify where additional roadways should be proposed for future construction, assess existing scenic and historic roadways, and identify roadways that may require additional infrastructure to support an adequate level of service. These are the questions we asked in previous meetings. What roadway elements and factors has Prince George's County seen since 2009 that would impact the roadway facility recommendations in the new MPOT? And what specific issues or considerations should be addressed in the update for the MPOT as part of the scenic and historic road designation process or application of special design standards for these designated roadways? So that's a mouthful, but essentially we asked those questions, and this is the feedback we got from agencies, Prince George's County agencies and municipalities. The factors that have changed since the 2009 MPOT include budgetary constraints, federal infrastructure money, somebody said more accidents, changing growth and commute patterns, changing corridors. Scenic and historic roadway considerations include driver and bicycle safety, accommodating utilities, the need for a quantifiable scale to designate scenic roadways. So everyone in here may not be familiar with factors that have changed since the 2009 MPOT, but you will know when we talk about the feedback what you think are different about roadways since 2009, but you can also focus on scenic and historic roadway considerations. So what considerations are you thinking of? So in your view, what is missing from that feedback that we just saw? And if we need to go back and look at the slide, we certainly can. And I know it takes a moment to get warmed up and for the question to show up.
There was a question in the chat, Christina, on what are historic and scenic roadways. I could try to pull that up and give an example while
Okay.
you look at this.
Keep going. All right, great.
Yep.
Thank you. Someone wrote in here, need to get away from level of service grading of roads, which is about moving cars as fast as you can. Need to change to, they would like us to change to moving people, not cars. And they said California made this change. So that goes back to what we talked about earlier. Are there any examples that you can use? And this person said California had some changes there. Anything else when we talk about roadways? And I can go back. Oh, need to. All right, someone wrote, calling out Route 1 as historic road that also feeds towns, small businesses, slower speed limit to allow for a better experience and encourage people to go to towns, trails, parks safely. Can the person who wrote that kind of expand upon that a little bit? Maybe come off mute?
Sure, this is Megan. A little bit more about, Route 1 is like Route 1 from Mount Rainier up to Laurel and beyond, actually is a massive national historic roadway. And we have a great portion of it in Prince George's County that connects a lot of small towns that have great restaurants, small businesses, and trailheads. But because of the speed and congestion on Route 1, of people just mostly using it as a way to get somewhere and not as a kind of a place itself. I think that there's an opportunity for people to understand the value of Route 1 as a historic road and how many places there are that peel off of Route 1, but maybe you're moving it either you're in a congested area and you just want to get home, or you're moving too fast to pull off and really experience towns like Riverdale Park, Hyattsville, Laurel, and places like that.
Right. Okay. Thank you. I really appreciate you going into detail about that. Go ahead.
Christina, a couple points here. So I think Megan kind of pointed out a couple of them. I've actually pulled up our existing inventory. By the way, everyone, you're probably wondering who this guy is that keeps interrupting. My name's Quasi. I'm the project manager for the MPOT. And so I actually pulled up our current inventory, one of the sub-consultants who put that together. And some of the streets on here are Cherry Hill Road, Edmondson Road, or Maryland 201. And portions of the Baltimore-Washington Parkway, Old Baltimore Pike. So those are some examples there. And then I did want to just mention, I had seen some comments on level of service and okay, and I was about to say the California example, but someone has actually put in here, California has some of the worst traffic in the country. Don't do the opposite. I was going to mention that I actually came from California and was doing planning out there. And yes, we are familiar with a lot of jurisdictions switching from level of service, which is generally more car-centric, to metrics like VMT. And we will be incorporating VMT as part of the plan here as one of the metrics that we look at so that it's not solely focused on level of service.
Thank you very much. And you may want to define VMT. Everyone may not be aware.
Yes, thank you for calling me out on that. Yeah, so VMT being vehicle miles traveled, and that's really speaking to how much someone is having to travel in their vehicle. And so it's really just like one vehicle and a mile that they travel. And so depending on the scenarios that we come up with, we're able to measure whether or not the overall car travel is going up or down. And in some cases, you want it to be going down. And so that's what we'd be looking to do with the MPOT.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So we've got the questions answered about historic roadways, some additional information about VMT. Thank you very much. And we do know you because you had your own introduction in the main room. So they know who you are. I'm going to go over I'm not going to read all these verbatim, but I just want to make sure everyone got a chance to see these that came up in the Slido while we were having that discussion. Someone wrote the main inconsistency with the older MPOT was that it proposed more bike trails and better sidewalks and side paths, etc. But at the same time, virtually all the main roads were proposed to be widened with additional car lanes. Individuals like you can't have both. So I think we need to take a wait and see on lane expansions until you really know if the car trip demand is really going to increase again. So again, talking about seeing that kind of demand. It might not so much with work from home. So we're hearing that a lot, how COVID has changed the landscape in many different ways, including in how we are using transportation or using transit or using our roadways. Induced demand for road projects, want to better account for that. Want single lane roadways in less dense suburban areas. Why isn't walk LOS or bike LOS on equal par with car LOS? I think car LOS needs to be on highways where people aren't walking or biking, but in neighborhoods and economic development areas, we need lower LOS for cars to make the places work for people. Would you like to come off mute and expand on that a bit?
Hi, thanks. Yeah, this is Jeff.
Yeah, Jeff.
Yeah, I just meant that, I've seen some metrics with walk level of service and biking level of service. And I think that that's a good proxy for how accessible places can be especially if you're trying to have a high density commercial area or a high density residential and mixed use area. So I think that when we slap a car LOS into those kind of areas, it can get really confusing. And I think car level of service should really be more for when you're transporting people from place to place at greater distances at higher speeds, but less so in the neighborhoods where people are trying to get across the crosswalks and so on.
Thank you very much. Also, I read on here, need complete streets implementation. I do want to mention on the project website, there's a presentation on complete streets. And also the municipality presentation where we have with different municipalities, that's on the MPOP project website as well. We'll be putting those links in the chat so that you can access that, but just wanted to mention that.
Christina,
Yes.
one other thing, and for some reason you're actually blending into the background there on your video.
Is that better?
But that is better.
Okay.
Someone had asked in the chat, what is LOS an acronym of? And it's level of service. And so what that is, it's a letter grade that jurisdictions use to grade how well it can be at an intersection level. Vehicles are essentially moving through the intersection, or it can be at a roadway segment level. And so, A being good movement, all the way down to F being poor movement.
Thank you. Okay, so then we have this one last comment. Some commercial businesses, especially auto-oriented, have a really long curb cut. So cars just pulling anywhere in that long curb cut. So it's dangerous to walk about those sidewalks, especially at car lots and strip malls. Okay, thank you. Anybody else have anything on roadways they want to share? Otherwise, we'll move on to the next slide.
There's a couple comments in the chat. Megan said that the Maryland Historical Trust is funding a study of the history and historic alignment of Route 1 from DC to Baltimore. And then a couple comments about Seattle.
Okay. Thank you for sharing. And again, we'll make sure in the overall analysis of all this of this information that you all are giving us in the dialogue that we include that. And someone said no law prohibiting cycling. Go ahead.
Christina, there's one other, someone just mentioned nothing about a reduction in emissions. I should say VMT is actually a proxy for greenhouse gas emissions. And so that would be a part of our analysis as well. We're still determining what the ultimate performance measures will be, but just know that VMT is typically used as a proxy for that.
Okay, excellent, thank you. All right, on to the next slide. All right, whew, this is a check-in. So why do we have this? Well, you've been on the call with us since 6 and in this particular breakout room since about 6:25, 6:30. So we just want to check in, make sure people can access the Slido, people can take a breather before we get to the next question, before we get to the next transportation themes. So if we can have some thumbs up using the Teams control, see how people are feeling here. Do you have some thumbs up there? Okay, just kind of giving you a breather before we go in and out, go into the next set of questions, which are slightly different from these questions. All right, just wanted to check in. Questions, comments before we go forward?
Yeah, Christina, someone has in the chat here, Is there someone we can speak with? Again, we are an MBE supplier for environmentally products for fleets of vehicles. I think we may need to take that offline and have a
Yeah.
discussion there.
I would definitely say that would be an offline discussion. What we really want here is to have people give their feedback on the master plan of transportation, but there's going to be some contact information at the end. And if you want to contact the project manager with this project, you may, send them that information. Also, there are office hours about the master plan of transportation. So maybe you set up an office hour, but yeah, I think that conversation will be best had offline. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, now we are talking about sustainability. All right, so how does sustainability apply in transportation? You've probably heard the term sustainability several times, but in what way? What does that mean when it's transportation? So in transportation, sustainable transportation refers to any means of transportation that is green and has a low impact on the environment. Sustainable transportation is also about balancing our current and future needs. So here's some examples of sustainability in transportation: improve freight efficiency, increase public transportation, um, enhance electric vehicle infrastructure, utilize green construction, maximize smart growth, integrate land use, promote green highways, and support bike-friendly communities. Those are some examples. So again, we mentioned earlier that this is all about getting your feedback, but that we have spoken to some people in the community, such as public agencies and municipalities. This is what they had to say about sustainability, but you know what's coming next. We're going to want to know what you think about it. But in the agencies, sustainability can have many meetings. Which of those aspects was the most significant for both agencies and municipalities? It was environmental sustainability. We also asked public agencies and municipalities what other aspects of sustainability are important to you. Now, if you've ever used one of these tools like Slido, this is like a word cloud. It shows you exactly as people typed it in, including any typos. So that's what they typed. So aspects, and then it makes the words that are said most often a little bigger. So you can see aspects of sustainability that public agencies liked were maintenance. You saw that twice. And but municipalities, they were talking more about operational resiliency or life of project. So now we're asking you, and yes, it's a slightly different format. So we're not asking you what was missed, but now we're asking you to kind of tell us which of these aspects of sustainability have the most significant impact on you. You as a person on this call, what has the most significant impact on you? You may choose your top 3. And you can you're going to see what people are saying as we move forward. So it's like a horse race almost. Environmental sustainability is up there, maintenance sustainability. Okay. All right. Has everyone had I want to see 5 people have commented so far. 7. So environmental sustainability, it's coming out really at the top here so far. All right. We know we have, maybe about 17 people on the call with us. So we have about 9 responses so far. I'm going to give you a little bit more time. Environmental's coming up a lot, then maintenance sustainability. Some votes for cultural sustainability, resiliency, none for supply chain. So what's most important to individuals is this: 91%.
Hi, Christina. Someone made
Yes.
a good comment, an astute comment. Yes, maintenance and fiscal sustainability are kind of the same thing here. What's listed here is not only what kind of our overarching sustainability metrics were, which were the environmental, maintenance, and economic. I'm sorry, the environmental, fiscal, and cultural. A couple of those were added from our previous engagement. And so people wanted to get a little bit more detailed. And so that's exactly you're seeing. The economic and fiscal are also sort of similar. So That's the high level ones are environmental, fiscal, and cultural, and then equity, economic, and maintenance could all kind of fit within those larger groups. But if you wanted to have it be more specific, you're free to do so.
Thank you for that explanation. You want to vote? Someone, I did see one comment said they want to vote for them all. I'm trying to manage it. So we appreciate that. You can always put, again, these comments, we're tracking these comments here. So we are asking for top 3 to help us narrow it down a bit as we do the MPOT. Okay, I think, does everyone have a chance? I'll give you 30 more seconds to speak now or hold your comments to the next slide.
Yeah, there's another comment here, but economic could also include making sure that the plan ensures local businesses like bike shops thrive, and that is true.
Yeah, that's a good, so I think that what I'm hearing is that there may be some room to define it a bit for people. Okay, we'll move to the next slide. Goals and success indicators. Again, we're always going to tell you what feedback we received previously. So when we spoke with public agencies and municipalities, and we asked what are the key elements of successful transportation system for them, you can see safety is really big here. And they both agencies and municipalities thought safety was big, and municipalities also thought accessibility. So when we talk about elements of a successful transportation system, how are we measuring this? Also, additional feedback we received when we talked about Prince George's Plan 2035, identified several transportation related themes. We asked them to rank the themes in order of importance to their agency or to their municipality. You could see that safety was, again, top of mind for both. And then a little bit different with agencies with multimodality, and the municipalities, again, accessibility is really big, but multimodality is up there. And then affordability came in the same place, and energy efficiency. So now it's your turn. Please rank these themes in order of importance to you. Accessibility, energy efficiency, affordability, multimodality, safety, few others. I am going to ask you to give a little bit more in a moment. If someone chose other, would you mind coming off of mute and telling us what the other is? What other theme is important to you?
This is Jeff. I was thinking connectedness. I didn't really know how that fit in, maybe accessibility, but I was thinking connectedness of the transport network.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else vote for other?
While people are voting, I'll say, yeah, I think, Jeff, the connectedness or connectivity is kind of falling under that accessibility metric.
Okay. And then we're seeing safety here as well as a running theme with public agencies, municipalities, and with community members here as well as affordability, multimodality, accessibility. So kind of coming in a bit in line with these agencies and municipalities as well, with safety being up there and multimodality being part of the picture. I do see energy efficiency here too. Okay, we'll give people, maybe if you haven't put your answer in yet, we'll give you another like 5 or 10 seconds and then we'll move forward in the slides.
Christina, there's another comment here. Safety, access, and multimodal can drive efficiency.
Thank you. And I think that that makes a lot of sense. And we appreciate your comment.
Hello, how you doing? This is Benny De Oliveira, and I don't know where this will fall into, but I know that our tax money is paid for providing fuel for emergency vehicles and all that. So there's I was wondering, there's a product out there that we supply where it helps reduce the cost for fuel and emissions. So is there something about cost or, you know, again, it's the taxpayers' money that we're paying for, and there's we have documentation there to show that there's different municipalities that's using this type of product. Where would that fall under?
I think we actually might have covered that already in the sustainability. So that was where we were looking at fiscal sustainability and
Got it.
maintenance. Products like that would fall under that.
All right, thank
This
you.
one, just to clarify, these are more when we actually go to evaluate the actual plan, what is going to be the metrics by which we evaluate and determine whether or not we're moving in the right direction with the plan.
So, right, this is under the kind of success indicators.
Right.
Thank you for clarifying. Okay. All right, moving forward. Now we're going to talk a bit about transportation equity. And when we're talking about equity, I know sometimes people think about equality and equity and they think, oh, maybe that's the same thing. But equality is making sure everyone has the same thing, and equity is making sure everyone has what they need according to their individual needs. So whether that's if you give everybody a bike, since we're talking about transportation, and you have a family and you have a toddler and a teenager and then some adults, and you give them all the same bike, well, that's not really going to work. Maybe the toddler needed the tricycle, right? So equity would be making sure that people had what they need according to their individual situation, right? So the toddler would be small, teenagers a little bit bigger, adults, etc. So we're talking about equity in that sense. So just wanted to define that because sometimes people have questions. So when we ask public agencies and municipalities about equity, we ask their top 3 transportation equity concerns, and affordability was, accessibility was number 1 for both. That's why it's highlighted in blue and it's very large, closely followed by affordability with municipalities and also with public agencies. So we want to know, what are your top 3 transportation equity concerns? Ability, accessibility, affordability, mobility, or is it something else entirely? See affordability up there. So accessibility is coming out, so making sure people have access to transportation and affordability, but you all are still voting. Excuse me, you are still putting your choices, making your choices clear. Okay, accessibility still seems like in this group, it seems to be some of the most important. Okay, I think maybe we have a few more people because there are only about 8 people. But we see accessibility, affordability, and mobility. And we do see one other as a transportation equity, and ability is at the bottom. So the individual or individuals who said other, would you mind coming off of mute and telling us a little bit about that?
Sure. Hi, it's Stephanie Walder from DPW&T. And thank
Stephanie.
you. Hi, thank you so much for the format. And I've been jumping in and out of questions, but when I think of equity concerns, I didn't really pick the other for 3 or 4, including ability. But for me, my equity concern is related to the planning element of it, that it's in areas that are underserved. So I know once it gets there, it would have opportunity for accessibility, affordability, mobility, and ability. But the other number one concern really is planning it in underserved communities.
Okay. So before we can even get to this type of ranking, you said we have to make sure we're getting to the right places, is what I'm hearing you say.
Bingo.
Got it. Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing that.
You're welcome.
And that's what we're asking, because we want to know what the community is thinking about equity, and maybe they're thinking about it in a slightly different way. So thank you.
I
Yeah,
put
thanks, Steph.
well
Oh.
as an option. I just wanted to say I didn't see environmental concerns. I live in a pretty scenic, on a pretty scenic strip, and environmental issues are of concern to me. The aesthetic, um, green space, etc. So
Okay. So we talked a bit about sustainability and transportation, but for you, the reason it's in others, because you really want to, you just didn't see what you wanted on this one, and to you, the environmental, the green space, someone wrote earlier, like beautifying the roadways, all of that is important to you.
yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, Eric, can I just ask a clarifying question? Were you here for the previous discussion on sustainability?
Yeah, I was. And what I mean by the equity and the environmental piece is, I mean, we're surrounded by woods and a lot of environmental impacts. I can imagine to transportation should be considered. So I often
Okay.
feel like because we have green space, it's a green light for road building, extension of roadways, when that may not be compatible with the environmental footprint that we're looking for.
Right. And I will say, I think in that environmental sustainability area, we didn't touch on it in detail, but I think what you're specifically talking about will be discussed there on how to maintain some of those spaces so that it's sustainable, and we're not getting rid of all of the green space, and definitely keeping Prince George's beautiful.
Yeah, we want to be Prince George's proud. Okay, so we talked about top 3 transportation equity concerns. I do want to, for individuals who said accessibility or affordability or even mobility, just if anyone wants to say, since this is the individuals who live in North County or have more questions about North County, is there something in the county, a place where you think it's not accessible, or options that are not affordable that you wanted to point out or let us know that we can consider? It's okay if you don't have anything extra to say, but if you do, we've been having such a great dialogue, please feel free.
Maybe in the meantime, Christina, there were a couple things I could bring up here from the chat.
Please do.
First, someone shared a graphic that kind of shows the difference between equity and equality. So if anyone wants to check that out. And then also there's a comment, accessibility means, they're asking, does accessibility mean only physical access here? They work in a food security where access includes economic and affordability. I think all of that does get wrapped up in accessibility. So I think you're making a good point there.
Yeah, thank you. So
on your last question, sorry, this is Tina. I don't know if there's any areas that like transit and transportation like doesn't exist, but I will say that in certain areas, and I've seen this in other areas where it's easy to go north and south or east and west, but if you want to go northeast or something, an area that would take a 15-minute drive will take 45 minutes or an hour and 15 minutes. And the problem is that, I mean, it's nice because like Ubers and Lyfts exist, but then there's a higher cost of that than taking a bus. And so I think that is definitely a challenge in like the connectivity. Now the buses exist; they go north and south. Then you have to wait 15 minutes, or you're not sure if one will come to go the other way. And so for a lot of times, I've even just put in my budget like Uber and Lyft money, because I'm like, I just don't know how to get there without wasting all this time. And that is a resource, and time is money, a resource of what you could be doing other than sitting on the bus or waiting for a transfer. or it's just a short commute or a short distance, just seems kind of ridiculous in some areas. I know it's where I live. I live off of Annapolis Road, so it's just kind of the nature of how things are connected. But I definitely see that in a number, or at least a couple different areas, like even getting to Greenbelt. If I have a doctor's appointment, I know I have to take a $20 Lyft. Thank
Right.
you.
Thank
Or
you.
something like 2 hours.
Right. No, I really appreciate that feedback. And what we're asking is for you to kind of share what these concerns are. So we do appreciate that. I'm going to move to the next slide. We talked a little bit more about success indicators here. So again, public agencies and municipalities gave us what they thought were some good indicators in order of their importance to them. So, and you can see increasing bicycle and pedestrian facilities was number one, and then increasing non-auto mode share for municipalities, but slightly different for agencies, it was affordability. We want to talk a little bit more about success indicators. We briefly mentioned it earlier in this discussion, but Prince George's Plan 2035 identified several transportation-related success indicators. We want you to rank those indicators in order of importance to you. So, what's most important to you? This is a ranking, so if you're on your phone or mobile device, you kind of have to drag it up to put it in place.
So Christina's Tina in the chat just asked, can you define non-auto mode share? And Tina, I think you're the perfect person to ask this question, given that you don't own an auto, because what this is saying is if we were to measure all of the trips that are happening in the county, are we seeing a change in the percentage of non-drivers, right? Non-auto trips. And so that could actually be a good indication that, okay, we've provided enough activity and resources that people don't feel they need to be driving.
Okay, thank you for the explanation. Thank you for the question. Okay, so we're getting a few. We have 2 people who have 3 people. So far, indicators of importance to you. We're seeing decreased vehicle miles traveled. So this would be, we would say this plan is successful if these things happen: decreasing vehicle miles traveled, increasing bicycle pedestrian facilities, increasing non-auto mode share, and then reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but that's a little bit lower. Again, we'll give you a little bit of time to kind of go through these. So it looks like increasing non-auto mode share has come out on top here. We only have 5 responses though, so please, we may have lost some people though, but please kind of continue to share your opinion here. And another success indicator would be decreased vehicle miles traveled. Okay, and affordability is on here, but it's a little bit lower. Go ahead.
Christina, there's a comment here. I think it's really important. This is once again coming from Tina. I think it's really important to increase the number of people who want to move to Prince George's County, especially younger potential residents.
That was in, sorry, this is Tina. That was in relation to the non-auto mode share. So I just wanted to show how that ties into like future, planning and attracting of new residents, as well as making things more enjoyable and better for current residents.
Okay.
Thank you. So, okay, so that is definitely coming up among this group as number 1, increasing non-auto mode share. But bicycle and pedestrian facilities. So these are some ways we can measure that. Okay, we're going to move forward to the next slide. And also I want to say thank you so much. This has been a really great dialogue. I'm really excited. So, okay, you may not have been counting because we were having such a great time talking, but we covered all 6 transportation themes that we wanted to review with you today. So we're kind of at the end of the presentation, and we want to talk to you about this engagement timeline. So you've heard us mention several times that we had received feedback from other groups So this just timeline just showed you some of the, when we met with some of the groups in the fall. It mentions the virtual community engagement meetings, which are happening right now today, and then also tomorrow and Thursday. And that part of this MPOT, the project team will develop an existing conditions report in April. And then in spring, we will have community advisory group meetings that these community advisory groups can then kind of review and comment on the existing conditions report. So everyone who registered here will get a bit of an email with an expression of interest link if you're maybe interested in being on an advisory group and kind of giving your opinion a bit more. This is the project schedule. And I'm not going to read it out to you, but you can kind of see like how it started in July 2021. You can see where we are and are now and kind of where we're going. Again, that existing conditions analysis is supposed to be, it's coming out in April. And we want to keep you engaged. So what are the engagement opportunities? Well, online surveys. So we opened our survey tonight. So hot off the presses, you're the first ones who are getting the survey for the MPOT transportation survey. That will be open for about a month. And Karen is going to put the survey link in the chat. We do ask that you continue to provide your opinion and just be as engaged on the survey as you were with us on the call today. So we will be putting that in the chat. You can also attend virtual office hours. So the planners have virtual office hours, which are Monday and Wednesday, 1 to 3 p.m. Also, Karen will be placing into the chat the link to sign up for those virtual office hours. So when we say we want you to be engaged and we want the community to be engaged, we mean we want you to be engaged, from meetings to surveys to virtual office hours to speak with the planner. Then, of course, as I mentioned before, there will be future engagement meetings with those community advisory groups in the spring.
Hi, Christina.
Go-
There was one.
yes.
There was one comment in the chat. Question was asking, why are there no priorities for safety, reduced accidents, injuries, and deaths? And I can answer that and say there were a few areas where you had an opportunity to mention that safety was really important, but I can also say that as part of our analysis, we're actually doing a safety analysis as part of the MPOT. So that is definitely being looked at.
Right. And I'm not certain if that individual also saw the Vision Zero portion, which is one of the transportation related themes, which is all about, zero fatalities on the roadway. But thank you. Project contact information. So we talked about ways you can be engaged. There are some tools for you in the chat, including the survey and office hours. And also here's the website. We're just putting the project website in the chat as well. Also, there are emails from the MPOT project manager, Crystal Saunders Hancock, and the deputy project manager, Judith Howerton. We place their emails in the chat. And you can always follow PG at PG Planning MD on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Some of you may have heard about the meeting that way. And we definitely want you to stay engaged and keep in touch. So these are all tools and ways that you can do that. All right. Now we're at the point where we say, what questions do you have? Although you guys have asked very engaging questions throughout the presentation, but are there additional questions you have before we close out for the evening? You can put them in the chat. You can raise your hand and then we'll call on you. All right. We'll give it about 15 more seconds in case something hits you. Sometimes as soon as you finish the call, you're like, oh, I wish I had thought of that. So we'll give you time to kind of think of that.
We have Tina who just raised her hand.
Just a quick question. I know that you're saying at the very beginning what this is not, but I'm just wondering in terms of this not being, I don't want to say another plan or study that gets put on a shelf and not looked at. In terms of implementation or commitment to to utilize for forming plans that are going to be implemented. How is that working? Because I know you were saying it's not a agreement and not a promise of anything, you know, happening, but I just want to know how it's going to be tied in, and how to be held, I guess, how the county is going to be held accountable for utilizing the final plan. Sorry, that was long-winded.
No, we understand what you're saying, Quasi.
Yeah, so I think the best way to think of this, Tina, is this plan, you're right, in and of itself, it is not, it's just a policy document. However, once you set this plan in place, all of the subsequent master plans and actual projects that are going to come up will have to come in light of this plan, if that makes sense. And so once we've got this document set, it kind of sets the narrative for what's going to happen in the subsequent projects to come. And so that's where the teeth comes in, because now if plans are coming in that are inconsistent with your master plan of transportation, then you get held accountable. It's kind of an internal way of the county being able to kind of set their vision and make sure that other plans coming up hold to that, I should say.
Thank you. And this we appreciate the question and we appreciate your answer as well. This is the project contact information. Again, it's on screen, but it's also in the chat. I see a couple people are signing off here. Are there additional questions? If not so much. Any other hands raised?
No more hands.
No more hands. Okay. Thank you for attending, for a great dialogue. I can sometimes see the chat questions on my other device, but sometimes I can't. But I have seen people saying they really appreciated not just the presentation, but the participants, so that you all have such a great dialogue. Really appreciate you all. Again, everything is kind of in the chat. We will have, if Karen can post one more time, that survey and our thank you for attending message, and then we will sign out.
Yep, the survey link's in the chat again.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, everyone have a great night.